Welcome back to the table. Today, Emily and I are going to tell you about Evacuation. This is a game we just played.
Yes.
In fact, it wasn't just the two of us. We played it with Jeremy. Jeremy himself actually evacuated the area and went back home. But we are here to share with you our initial thoughts, having just played Evacuation. This is Vladimir Suchy's latest game. It's going to be an Essen release, I believe. And I'm not going to bury the lead. This game is heavy.
Our brains are still burning. You can see the smoke.
Mine especially. This is, I haven't played his entire catalog, but of the games, of his more recent games, this is, and I'm talking recent since Pulsar, so it's been a minute. This is easily the heaviest of his games that I've played, I feel. So the crunchiness here is real.
Yes.
Mechanically, not crazy.
No, but a lot going on.
There's a lot going on.
In this game, what we're doing, right, is we're taking this old world planet where we start with a bunch of resources, everything's built up for us. And thematically, we're moving to this new planet because our old one's too close to the sun. Things aren't going well on that planet. What's that like?
Right.
So we got to take all the stuff from the old planet, move it over to the new planet, and start really building that and building our technology, building our production. But the way that actually happens on our player board is that we actually have two different productions, right?
Yeah.
And two different places for the same kinds of resources. And we have to be literally shipping them on a ship, transporting them from one world to the other in order to use it in the new place.
Until you can start to establish yourself in the new place, and then you're going to start producing over there.
Yes.
And that's really the name of the game, because your production over on the new planet is really the end game that you're looking for, because that's where... let's back up for a second. You can play this game in a couple different ways.
Yes.
The way they recommend first starting to play it is sort of what they call the race mode. And this is going to be such where the game end triggers or we reach the end of 4 rounds. And there's some, no points are being scored, but you're going to look at your resource board. You're going to lose some negative points by taking your lowest resource down. And then effectively, if one person has achieved a few different things after all of those penalties, they'll win.
Yay!
If it's tied, there's some tiebreakers. If no one's achieved those 3 things, then you just go to kind of the tiebreakers underneath there. So you're kind of like the best loser, if you will, which brings to another point. It is a punishing and tight game. There's a lot here that you have to go.
And that's just one of the modes, right? Because then the other mode is that you can play it just for victory points, right? So you can play it where it's not a race. You always go the 4 years, and then at the end of that, they have a way to score it. Plus, like you said, there's also more on top of it. There's modules you can add for objectives and other things.
We didn't even use those, by the way.
We did not. We did the base, because they recommend that. They recommend doing the base way first, and we recommend doing the base way first.
We absolutely do. We play a lot of games, and a lot of times we'll play a game and we're like, let's go ahead and read the advanced rules. Revive. There's a lot of games recently that I would recommend. Oh, let's play it that way. Evenfall, even.
Yes.
This one, nope. I would highly recommend playing the way they suggest to play, because there's enough going on.
There's so much going on.
And enough things to try to keep track of and remember and balance that'll be plenty. In fact, I would say that even after having it played it once that way, almost always we would go from that to the advanced rules. I kind of want to play this again.
With the base.
Just like we just played it, without the advanced rules. Because the advanced rules really ratchet a few things up, bring up a lot more things to consider on your turns. It changes basically these cards as you see them right now to potentially these cards with all sorts of information on them and different ways that they can be used, and multi-use cards, which is all great. You know, and when someone says all that stuff, I'm like, ooh, yes, please, let's play with that.
But don't get too excited. You don't need that quite yet.
Just take your time. It's pacing here is what you need to do. And that is exactly the name of the game, too. Pacing, because like Emily said earlier, you do want to get things evacuated and over here. You want to kind of like transition from a point where you have production to like reducing your production down to nothing, which is effectively what happens when you've evacuated the planet.
Yes.
And getting that up over here. Now, you can't just go crazy
No.
and bring over a ton of things, reducing your production over here, because the balance of this game is such that if you do that too quickly, then you're going to not have the resources you need in the mid-game.
Exactly. And the way they do it is that, so you're going to take an actions phase, right? You're going to be doing different actions, but each of your actions successively gets harder because you have to pay more energy for it. And the way you're paying energy changes throughout the game. So like at the beginning of the game, we're paying all our energy from the old world because that's where we have energy. But then once we get to a halfway point, basically, you're going to start paying energy only from the new world.
Yeah.
So if you're not producing energy on the new world, you're not taking as many actions.
Yeah, and just to be clear,
just stuck.
Energy is one of 3 resources. There's steel, there's food, there's energy. All 3 of those are used to do things thematically out on the board, to build things, to sort of like control what's happening in the game. Energy is also used kind of more abstractly to take more actions during the round. So the first 2 actions are free every round. The 3rd action costs an energy. The 4th action, 2. And then everything from 5 on is 3 energy that you're spending. Again, this is energy that you could be spending to build an energy plant and to do different things. To fly your ships across the board, which I mistakenly
did not do.
Ended around and then didn't have enough energy to transport stuff over. These are things that you have to consider. And that energy, you need to get that energy production. You don't want to burn it over here before you got it going over here. If you find yourself in a situation where you're in a dip in energy, you're going to be very lean on the actions that you're taking.
And then like we were saying, that transport is huge. So after everyone's done with all their actions, we're going to transport all of our ships at once. They're going to go from one planet to the other, but you have to have the energy to plant them. And then you also have to figure out what on your old board you want to evacuate and actually move over. And then, on top of that, we're also going to move our progress, which are these like satellites that are like orbiting the planets, and we're trying to move them over to the new world. But they really dictate then like where the pacing in the game is.
And what you can even do on the new planet. As you can see, there's a lot of icons on this progress track, some of which are bonuses, like you can get some resources here. You might be able to take one of the actions that you'd normally take during the action phase if you land on a spot. But a lot of them have these little tags, which look like a little sun or like a supernova, and you'll find a lot of those on spaces over here. These are the spaces where we're colonizing, building new factories, and a lot of them have those tags. So, if in a round, if prior to that round you ended on the progress track in the right spaces, you have a lot more options of where you're building over here. But if you didn't, if you ended in spaces for those bonuses, or if you just didn't have the right amount of progress to get where you needed, you're going to have very limited places where you can put here.
Well, and on top of that, these transition markers also say, so like when we start, we can all only colonize in the tundra. Until one of your progress markers goes past this first one, then you can go to the desert, and then past the other one in the forest, then past the 4th one in the sea. But we have 2 progress markers that we're moving, and they cannot be more than 1 transition space away from each other. So they have to be kind of neck and neck, really close to each other. And the first one is something that's going to like start evacuating some of your best spaces on your old world. So right off the bat, you started with all these resources, and then by year 2, you're going to be like, and now I'm getting way less income. Until I start really making progress on the new world and making that change throughout the game.
And there's a lot that we could talk about. We could go on for 2 hours talking to you about this game. We're not going to do that, but there are a couple things that I wanted to point out that I thought was really unique. And this will give you the flavor for the level of thought that you need to give to here. So as you're taking your actions during your turn, you're playing a card just to show that this is the action I'm taking, not for the face-up part. And then you take that action. But the actions all have a 1, 2, 3, or 4 in them. This effectively does a couple things. You're going to do this to determine at the end of the round, you're going to see what that value is. So if I have 2 cards in the 4 spot, there's an 8. If I have 2 more in the 2, that's another 4, 12. I'm going to move my progress markers exactly 12 spaces forward between the 2. So you have to think about your progress as you're playing your cards, not to mention trying to take the actions that you want to take with those cards.
Well, and some of the actions are repeated. It's slightly different. So you're thinking to yourself, like, do I want to take that action as a 4 and get 1 less resource? Or as a 1 and get the resource, but then when I do my progress, I won't be moving as much? It's a ton to be thinking about at once. Plus, not only is the power level used with the progress, it's then used in the bonus. At the end of that year, we look at a bonus and we say, okay, with strict bonus scoring, if you scored a 6, you get that top thing. And if you got an 11 power level, you get that bottom thing.
So and that bonus, I can tell you, that's just a little thing, but they're pretty significant. And that is a guiding light where you're like, I'll play here, here. Okay, I'm at 11. So you better hope that 11 bonus is worth it.
Yes.
And 11 is going to get you on the progress track where you want to get to do other things. Not to mention just get far enough on the progress track to trigger these things at these transition points.
Exactly. And I will say they do have a generous bonus variant too, where you can play it where it's not as strict, but that is the way that they recommend. And it's a lot to think about, right? When you're taking your actions, you're not just thinking about the action itself, but how much power it's going to give you, what that's going to mean for progress, what that's going to mean for bonus. Just a ton going on here.
There is a ton going on, and like I'm trying to resist the urge to go
say
on
everything.
and tell more, but like we haven't talked about like how you have to buy the ships to build them and building them.
You need stadiums for happiness, and you have technology tracks, and yes, there's
the
so
technology
much.
Tracks. They've got variable. Everyone gets 9 tiles that do wildly different things, and when you look at every one of those,
you're gonna be like, oh god, that's good.
Yeah, unlike most technology tracks in games, there's gonna be a few good things, and
No,
then some that are like, almost all 9 of these are like, oh, that would be useful at this point or this point. Having played the game and looking at these, I'm like, I could identify times in the game where I would have wanted to use all of them.
Yes.
But you just can't do that. There's just not enough actions. There's definitely not enough energy in the game. So we've given you an idea, and we will let you get down in the comments below and let us know if you want to know more.
What questions do you have?
But before we do that, we're going to talk about who we think the game is for and who we think it might not be for. Who's it for?
Who is it for is somebody who wants a heavy, crunchy game where you have a lot of decisions. And we said this during the game too. It felt not like I was playing against like other people competitively. It felt like I was playing against the game.
Yes.
Because it is very punishing. Not in a way where I was ever in a hole and I couldn't do anything, but I think you could get yourself to that spot if you didn't play your cards right. So you're just like constantly thinking to yourself like, okay, I really got to do this, and now I really got to do this, and it feels like you have this urgency the whole time because you have such a short timer on it. You only have 4 years to get all this stuff done.
Yeah, and along those same lines, when you do feel like you're playing against the game, and we play it 3 players, and I think all of us felt more like that than we did playing each other, it's going to be a game, I think, that lends itself really well to people who enjoy solo play.
Yeah.
Like, I don't play solo. I can't even imagine playing a game like this solo. It's like I want people at the table when I experience something like this. But at the same time, my number one goal with the next play of this is just to get better at playing the game, not necessarily to beat Emily to consider the other players. It's really like, okay, I want to figure a little bit more out and see if I can figure out exactly how I best transition from the old world to the new world. This is my area here. You can see that I didn't get one of my spots evacuated. Like, I want to get them all evacuated.
Yes.
I want to do all of that. I want to get more done here. There's these cards here that let you score really well on your resource production over here on the new world as long as you build in certain patterns or certain things over here. There's so many things that this game puts in front of you that are just like, here's a thing to do.
Yes.
Here's a thing to do.
And another carrot and another carrot.
Try to do them all. That if that sounds really interesting and fun to you, this game gives it a lot.
Well, and I will say too, we mentioned that there are additional modules it has, and also that the way we played it was just the base way. You can play it with the advanced actions. All these cards, instead of just markers, have actually different actions that you can take, and they have different power levels. So all that thinking we were talking about, like ratchet up, up, up.
It just ramps up. The cool thing about that mode is when you play an action, you can still take the actions on your board and use the cards just like we used in our game.
Yes.
Or I'm actually going to play it beside my board and take the action on the card at this power level.
Yes.
And it's just going to be more like, oh, here's another way I could solve the puzzle that I'm trying to figure out.
I just don't know how you could get bored in this game, right? Like, there's so much to think about. There's so much going on, so much to do. And each time you're like, okay, I just need to figure out all the things I'm doing and all the things. I remember I was using my cubes, not just for resources, but on the side to like keep track of what I was thinking in my head. I was like, and the next move I'm going to do this, and the next move I'm going to do this.
She did mention that she would have appreciated them including journals for everybody, just to track all of, okay, wait,
so I can write down
I need to plan what's going on here. If that's happening to Emily, you know that it's a crunchy game. Yeah, this game has a lot going on. So let's talk about who it's not for. The easy answer, everyone else. No, I'm not kidding. It's going to be largely that. However, like I said, I generally include myself in that everyone else category. I'm a medium weight gamer, as everyone knows. Emily, Ryan, they try to get me to play a bunch of Lacerdas. I don't play them. I mean, I've played a couple.
You have played a couple. You're going to keep playing more.
But I want to play this one again. This is one of those rare occurrences where I'm playing a game that's a little outside my comfort zone when it comes to weight. And I'm intrigued enough to want to play it again.
Yeah, I think the intriguing part too, like the innovativeness of it, is that 2 separate tracks, right, and the 2 separate resources.
That feels really very fresh.
It just feels very different from other things that are going on, and like you're taking the same actions, but you can be doing it on the other side of the board, and it's a lot to manage. So to your point of like who it's not for, again, like. Anybody who doesn't really like multiplayer solitaire, right? Because it's like also we're not really interacting.
That's true. There's not a lot of interaction. That's fair. I will say, just before you think, oh, it's total multiplayer solitaire, I would add there are some markets. You know, there's these cards, there's the ships, there's the stadiums. Those are all markets, and particularly these probably, and maybe the ships next. Maybe less so on the stadiums. These are things where you're like, oh, I need that ship before we do that phase of the game.
It definitely does change the way the timing of your actions as well, right? Because if I really need that ship, I'm going to take that action first because I can't afford for you to take it from under me.
100%.
And then I don't have the right resources to do the right thing. And there's like 5 more dominoes down the lines that are just completely messed up if I don't get exactly what I need, exactly when I need it.
And some of those ships are very vital. They're not just generic ships. They will let you do different things with different of these spaces. So it's not just like any ship can do anything. They are quite different. So I won't lie. There were times where Emily was taking her turn and I was looking at her eyes to see, don't you be looking at the ships right now.
You don't need a ship. You don't need a ship.
I've spent the last 2 turns collecting resources to buy this ship right here. So there is that level of tension for sure. Not to mention what's going on here. Once people start building out here, there is some because we're all here at first, like Emily said, then this isn't wide open from the very get-go.
Right.
So there is less space here than you think.
At times it's a little more crowded than others, and depending on where people go on the progress track too, if people all have the tags that you have, they have the same options as you.
Yeah.
If they don't, then you have a little bit more freedom. Similarly to the markets, like you can always pay an extra resource to wash the markets, but nobody wants to pay an extra resource. This game is tight enough as it is.
So to put a fine point on it, if you want a light game, if you're into tile laying games, this is not your game. This is a heavy game. But with that said, if you're a medium gamer, give this a try. I'm a big Vladimir Suchy fan. We generally like a lot of his games. Pulsar is one of my favorites. I think it's the last science fiction themed game of his.
Yeah.
This is a step up, for sure.
For sure.
For sure. So if you have any questions at all, like I said, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and continue talking ad nauseum about this game. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.